Welcome to Brash Ag, the farm innovation podcast with hosts Raymond King and Kit Franklin.
Namaste, Raymond.
Namaste. How are we? Sounds like you still got a touch of the lurgy.
Definitely still got a touch for the lurgy, Ray. But we're going to persist nonetheless. How are you today? Let's ask you that. Let's flip this whole narrative on its head. How are you?
Yeah, no, good. I'm all right. Yeah, no, I was just before on this call, I was boring you to death with my little 3D printed widget that I've come up with to as a nice little sharpening jig for one of the projects. We've got a mower, inter-row mower project that I'm working on, and we need to sharpen the blade. So just fired up the Flint Technology 3D printer and made a nice little jig to do that. So yeah. So I've had a good day, thank you.
So basically, you've been basically playing for the day, haven't you? That's the truth of it.
Hey, well, look, ultimately, sometimes the stars align as an engineer, and you get to do your job, and add value, and have a nice time.
Yeah, well, ultimately, what's the line that people say? I think Clive might have said it. If you do something you enjoy, you don't work a day in your life, do you? That's the thing.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, so I've been doing that, and then you, as far as I can see, have been off on a jolly yourself out into the cotton fields of Mississippi.
Yeehaw! Yes, I have. Rose and I took a lunch break. So one of my colleagues here at MSU was out harvesting a cotton field for some benchline data before a trial that's taking place next year. I've thought it was a good opportunity to go and see some cotton, and so went and had a sandwich out in the cotton field, which was quite cool, and had to go on a cotton compactor, and all sorts of other things. But as you say, it's nice when the stars align. I could feel like I was doing something. I was learning. I was asking lots of questions of the guys in the field, and ultimately one of my favourite things to do as an agricultural engineer is to engage with agriculture, especially agriculture I've not had the pleasure of dealing with in the past. So
very good. Well, maybe we'll do a deep dig at some point about cotton production. Maybe that would be a good one for our UK listeners to learn a little bit more, I think.
Oh yeah, we could do. Right,
where are we going today?
Well, we're going back to FIRA though. We're going back to FIRA to finish off my tour of the stands. And I think what we should say, Ray, actually, is that we're going to have lots of this sort of content coming up as well, because you're off to Agritech next week, aren't you?
I am indeed, yes. Yeah, I'm off out with a mutual friend of ours, actually, Dan Griffiths, and we're off to go and do just shy of 2 days, do some market research, understand what's new, what's up and coming. Be good to have Dan there as well, because he's got a very he'll give us a very good he'll certainly give me a very good understanding of some of he's got a good amount of knowledge of the sort of vegetable and potato equipment, so it'll be good to see that. And he's also got a good take on sort of no nonsense approach to technology development, so it'll be good to kind of get his thoughts and views there, and hopefully get some good interviews as well.
Cool. Well, we'll look forward to some Agritechnica episodes. No pressure, but I've got lots of content from FIRA, so you better have lots of content from Agritechnica. Okay, let's start. We're going to go in with a clip from Gary Thompson, who is COO of Guss Sprayers. Guss are a company. Now, you always joke, Ray, that I'm FarmDroid's biggest fan, but I think I've actually been talking about Guss for even longer than FarmDroid. They came to existence around 2018, and they had machines in field from around 2018, 2019. So quite early on in my sort of conference tour, talking about hands-free hectare, it was a really great example of a robot that I could show in a commercial an actual commercial product, unlike the prototypes and the research that we were doing. So it was a bit of a sort of red letter day in some sense for me to actually see a Guss machine in person and speak to Gary, who is part of that journey of development.
Okay, so I'm just catching up with Gary Thompson of Guss. Gary, this is a bit of a fan moment of mine. I've been talking about your product for at least 6 years, I think. I think you probably first made it into one of my slide decks as an example of a commercial machine around 2019, would be my guess on that. So it's cool to see one up close and in person. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Guss machine is a sort of self-propelled autonomous spraying system. Gary, can you just give us the background of where it came from and what it's all about?
Yeah, sure. So Guss is an autonomous orchard sprayer. So it's meant to do foliar application, air blast spraying in orchards such as almonds, pistachios, walnuts, pecans, stone fruit, apples, citrus, kind of any tree crop really. And we also have a smaller machine for vineyards and high density orchards. But the whole background of Guss, so we have a commercial spraying business in the Central Valley of California. So very large commercial application company. We have growers all over the state that hire us to come and spray their orchards for them. And that business has been around for 43 years now. And the founder CEO of that company, Dave Krinklaw, been very innovative over the years, built all kinds of really neat spray rigs, built very neat pruning machines. And Guss was kind of the latest in a line of innovations for him. Basically, he got to the point where his number one challenge was finding tractor drivers in order to do the spraying that he needed to do in his commercial business. So he had this idea. He thought, how great would it be to have a driverless sprayer, and had zero clue how to automate it. But he said, you know what, I'm just going to start building the thing. We'll figure it out. You know, and one of his famous lines is, it can't be that hard. And so kind of dove in head first with that mentality. And in fact, it was very hard, harder than any of us imagined. So the GPS denied navigation. Nobody was really even trying to do it at the time in agriculture. And so we were kind of the pioneer of that. And it took us about 3 years to figure out how to make this machine drive itself. So built the original platform in 2014 and set off on that path. And then finally had a working prototype in 2017. And at that point, we introduced them into that commercial spray business and started spraying for our existing customers in that company. And really just started fine-tuning the product, started getting a lot of acres under it. And from that point, just started having growers come to us and say, wow, that's amazing. Can we buy them? And that wasn't our original intention. Our original intention was just to solve our own labor challenge in our business. But, after hearing it from so many growers, we thought, you know what, there's a big opportunity here. So it made us get into manufacturing and outside sales. So.
Well, cool. And one of the reasons I really used to like following you guys on Twitter when Twitter was a thing full of agricultural stuff, which it doesn't seem to be anymore, was you used to often do updates on machines leaving the factory and numbers that had gone out the door in any given week or month or whatever, which it was great for me because I could walk into a conference and go, here's a machine that isn't a university project. This is a real machine and they're selling real numbers. So can you update me on that number now? How many of these exist?
Yeah, so we've sold over 260 of these machines, and we're getting close to 3 million acres sprayed autonomously across the whole Guss fleet. So quite a lot of acres under our belt, a lot of customers. And we're just really excited to keep this thing going.
Okay, and then maybe the sort of glaring elephant behind us is there's a big John Deere badge on a plinth behind us. What's the relationship with John Deere? And as you say, this started off as a product of not even a manufacturing company. So what's the link with John Deere now?
Yeah, so it was about 3.5 years ago, we actually formed a partnership with John Deere. So John Deere was really excited and to get, deeper into autonomy and automation, and they saw what we were doing, and, they were obviously very excited about the solution that we came up for ourselves, so that subsequently also worked for other growers. On top of that, John Deere was really trying to put a bigger emphasis within the organization on high value crops, so the orchards, the vineyards, and they looked at us as kind of experts in that market. Being in that market for 43 years as we've been, we've kind of been through it all. We've been through all the challenges of spraying orchards and vineyards and kind of know the ins and outs of it. And we really built all that knowledge into this machine, into the user interface, into the whole platform. They were excited to partner with us. And, from our standpoint, we were excited to partner with them because, as you said, we weren't manufacturers. We've been fabricating equipment for decades. But Guss was our first go at actually manufacturing, sourcing parts for like continual production, and then the whole sales side of things. And so we actually got up and going on our own 2 feet very well. But over time, it was pretty obvious to us that if we wanted to continue scaling this thing and taking it, really worldwide, John Deere would be an amazing partner to have. So formed that partnership. And then in more recent news, John Deere ended up fully acquiring Guss Automation. So we're really excited about that. Excited to take the next steps with them. And
we're not gonna lose this lovely stainless shiny colors.
Nope. The colors are staying the same of the machine, and we're going to continue our manufacturing in Kingsburg, California, right in the heart of the Central Valley. So yeah.
Cool. So one very last question to finish this off. What's the price of one of these machines on farm for a farmer?
Yeah, so our price is $317,000 for this machine, and really, we love to talk value with the growers, and the return on investment when a grower starts using these machines is very quick. So typically 1 to 3 years. It all depends on how many acres the customer's spraying. But the main driver is obviously just using less labor. Our whole plan from day one was we wanted one person to be able to monitor anywhere up to 8 of these machines at a time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the videos I used to use in the slideshow was a sort of row of these following a pickup truck down the field. It was a great video. So yeah, no, it's cool to have that one person fleet operation.
Exactly. So yeah, and just on top of that, just the efficiency. So with traditional manned equipment, there tends to just be more stop and downtime for meal breaks, for restroom breaks, things of the sort. Whereas with these Guss sprayers, we just experience less downtime. So you're spraying more acres every shift, and that really contributes to a fast ROI.
Well, perfect. Gary, thank you very much for your time and filling us in.
Thank you very much.
There you are then, Ray. Again, let's go back to this point. Are we roboticists trying to force our technology on farmers, or are we farmers and ag engineers using autonomy to solve our problems? And Guss is most certainly one that's come from an agricultural business facing an issue of lack of labor or lack of labor reliability, and turning to automation to solve that problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a quick Google of Guss. I had a picture in my head of what they look like, and they're sort of like hard to describe. They look almost like the Cybertruck in many ways. They're stainless steel. They're all sort of the only way in which they're not like the Cybertruck is they're not quite as faceted as a Cybertruck. They're sort of rounded on the body, but they're very much a dedicated autonomous machine, aren't they?
Yeah, you do see very similar looking machines with cabs on the front that are sort of self-propelled orchard sprayers, and you get those in the UK. In fact, there's some companies who actually use those air blast orchard sprayers to disinfect chicken sheds, I know. So it looks like the machine it's replacing. It's just there isn't a cab on the front, but it's a really dedicated machine for blasting chemicals into the tree canopy.
Yes, and I think the key thing there for me was two things that kind of come together. So he mentioned 2017. That was obviously sort of hot property time for ag tech, wasn't it? In terms of automation, autonomy, things sort of just starting to pick up and move forward. So they've obviously ridden the wave all the way to the finish in some ways of things picking up, riding that autonomy wave, making it through COVID, which is, was no mean feat, but actually in some ways there was a lot of cash around during COVID for autonomous machinery, and a lot of investment was made there. And then they've made it out the other side and actually landed a buyout from, one of the key players in the industry. So a good news story, I would say, in terms of startups starting out, alongside many others, delivering value, delivering products, and ultimately that kind of shows and kind of comes out the other side in an exit for them, albeit effectively a continuation. Carry on doing what you're doing. We love what you're doing, but we want to buy your technology and add you to the portfolio. So John Deere making that sort of strategic acquisition quite a key thing.
Yeah, nice little parallel to our first episode on FIRA, where we also started off with John Deere, actually, didn't we? But and actually there was Gary didn't say anything about this, and the John Deere guys didn't say anything about this, but there was a few little conversations I had around the event where people were saying, wonder what Guss feel like now that John Deere, a few months ago, John Deere bought Guss out as their orchard and vineyard solution. Now, just a couple of months later, John Deere are releasing a fully autonomous M5, 5ML or whatever it is, tractor designed specifically to work in that vineyard orchard environment autonomously. And actually, that's potentially going to stifle some of the potential for the Guss sales, I guess, because the key use case for your driverless tractor in a vineyard is to tow a sprayer. So interesting little sort of tussle there maybe now going to happen internally in John Deere about where the attention goes. Does it go into the tractors or does it go into these dedicated self-propelled machines? But of course, no one from Guss said that and no one from John Deere said that. That was just the vibes going around the event.
Interesting one to think about. I mean, my final comment, I suppose, around that would be that they'll know where they want the products to sit. John Deere will know where they want the products to sit within the portfolio, and I'm sure that there will be, Guss is almost a flagship piece, isn't it, in terms of the size and the scale of it and its dedicated nature, and then a smaller sort of John Deere tractor with a bit more flexibility built in probably is for a different customer or a different scale of customer, I would imagine. I don't know every last detail about it, but that would be what I would how I would sort of summarize it.
Okay, well, we're already quite a long way into this recording and we've got lots to cover, so let's move on. Let's head over now to, I guess, what we can start to call an American friend of the show. We're going to go over and hear from Chris Laudando.
Okay, so I've just bumped into Chris Laudando. Chris, it's been, I don't know, 8 weeks since we had you on the podcast, something like that. How's things going?
Is that all? It feels like it's been longer. Probably because of the amount of action that we've seen. We've just got back from Australia and we're standing here in Woodland at FIRA USA. So from one side of the world and hemisphere to the other. Kind of a stark contrast, but Australia is important. Subsequent to our chat, we did release our L&aser technology to beyond independent growers, to OEMs that are under $10 million a year cumulative. And we think that was in fulfillment of our promise to industry and to sustain our tech for farmers, which is the most important point here. So we've established the business there with our partner, RowReady. RowReady is a business owned and run by Braden Helmuth, who's got experience on the farming side in implement manufacture, machine building. So it's in keeping with the premise of farmers first and really focusing on ag people that get into tech as opposed to tech people that get into farming, which I think is the most important or one of the most important storylines to pay attention to. And so it's, it's a constant challenge to balance the non-recurring engineering and the day-to-day business that keeps the lights on, and this fight in the States illegally, and then expanding abroad. So it's perpetually too thin all around, because the depth and breadth of what we're doing is just too much for any one team. And I think that's the biggest challenge right now. And since we spoke, it's one thing to open up the tech. It's another to make sure that we give everything the attention it needs to sustain our core business, to proliferate things.
Yeah, well, yeah, interesting. Since I've been walking around, there is definitely that divide of people who came to this because, came to this in terms of ag tech, ag robotics, because they were a farmer or an agriculturalist with a need that robotics was going to solve. But then, yeah, those people who are, I was working in robotics, and we were really looking for an industry that would suit our technology. And you go, well, so do we really see your technology, or are you just going to try and push it on us?
In Australia, I was there for a full week, and the Gatton showcase was 2 full days, and I couldn't catch a break to use the bathroom from the amount of conversations I had, and 95% of them were with Aussie farmers.
Yeah.
And you saw farmers coming to the event looking for solutions that they could readily access, that were not just technically feasible, but they're financially viable in their desire. And I think that, I'm not showcasing here at FIRA, but I have heard and seen that, there's far more people involved in the technology and periphery of ag, it's ag tech related, than the growers themselves. I don't see a lot of growers here. I saw more growers at FIRA 2 years ago in Salinas.
Right.
And of course, that's where our well-capitalized growers exist here in California and in the States, right? And it's great to have Central Valley ag in the focus by coming here to Woodland. And I'm saying that as a guy who's in this northern Sacramento Valley of California, up in Chico. The simple fact of the matter is they just don't have the same purse, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the audience and the people that you see here are in that upper echelon of sort of the coastal specialty ag. And these tools are, by and large, with the exception of a few of the smaller ones, like Rotate 8 comes to mind as with their open source, low cost platform. But a lot of these things are, only accessible to some of the bigger specialty growers, right? The exception right in front of us here, I think the Aura sprayer is interesting. The Aura sprayer from Agri-Robotics has just made sense for a long time because of the resolution of the spray, as opposed to the big 616R, 120 foot wide, see and spray all over the place up front, right? Like, really interesting though. One point I will add about, just all around us we see spraying, right?
Yeah. Well, just context, there's 3 spot sprayers straight in front of us. There's others around the place. Yeah. Well, there's one there as well. There's 4.
There's one there behind us. There's others over there. There's drones that are spraying. There's everything over here doing orchard stuff, sprays.
Orchards.
Most of the autonomy demos that you're seeing here have what attached to them?
Yeah.
Sprayer.
Liquid applicators. Yeah.
It's liquid applicators, because that's the paradigm. The chemical-free stuff is very interesting, of course, because inputs are the biggest problem for, the broad agriculture that exists in the U.S. outside of California. And I think that the most important takeaway I have from this show so far is the idea of sort of like segmented approach to more of a broadcast or targeted spraying, but with drones. Sort of like the idea of surveying for the escape pressure of the multi-resistant species, the stuff that might require a third pass across all that acreage. But instead of doing that, you're going through targeted high throughput. That's viable. And it's like, to me, that's a great incremental step, just like an eco-robotics sprayer.
Well, yeah. And then, we'll...
what else do you want to talk about?
All I was going to say is, like, what are your aims from being here? Is like, what are you hoping to pick up on? Or is it just a vibe and an understanding of where the market's going?
I think it's super important to have a pulse on what farmers need, but also the ecosystem in which the solutions are born. Because if those two things aren't aligned, then we're going to have a hard time helping farmers, right? And so I think it's strategically important for anybody in an ag tech to sort of get the pulse on what solutions are present. And I come here to get a histogram distribution understanding of what's being offered and what's being supported.
Yeah.
And so knowledge is power. And, for me, it's my own natural neural nets trying to parse what is here in the States versus what is abroad, versus what growers here in the States are facing as problems versus what growers abroad are facing. Because a lot of these are brands you're seeing worldwide, right?
Yeah.
And so it's market research and it's relationship maintenance. I mean, farming is human, and I love coming here and shaking hands with people, and you get a lot more insight. I'm one of the few people that likes to tell it like it is, so far as I can tell.
Yeah, well,
and not everybody's comfortable with that, right? Certainly not on record.
Yeah, well, I'll just wrap this up by saying, I enjoy your LinkedIn essays, and and I'll keep reading them avidly. But Chris, thanks for your time, and we'll catch up again in future.
Take care.
Okay, so Chris there again highlighting this sort of dichotomy between is this technologists trying to find a market, or is this agriculturalists finding solutions? And it sounds as well as though since we had him on the podcast and with all his legal things that none of that pressure has gone away, and so we did speak extensively, I guess, away from the recording about the level of time and effort that still that legal proceeding that he's going through with or has been going through with carbon robotics has taken up. But the laser technology that he has is openly available, as we've already said, and people should go and check that out and dig into it if they wish.
Yeah, no, it's interesting actually. Here he sort of opened that up commercially, hasn't he, to smaller, under $10 million, I think he said, doesn't he? Smaller businesses. So I assume that's his hope. His hope is that gives, some of the smaller manufacturers a bit of a leg up in the non-chemical weeding game, and helps to, you could also see it a bit from the conversation we had in our last episode about this. It's kind of that integration piece with the startups. Do you think about your technology, providing your technology to them as a sale, or do you think about it perhaps more as like a marketing piece and say, well, actually, our technology works really well with them, and we're making a really good go of it there, and if bigger companies want to get involved, kind of get in contact and we'll make it happen. The frustrating piece to that is obviously their ongoing legal dispute probably makes the conversations with any bigger manufacturers difficult, because they're gonna be concerned that at any moment that might end up the tech might end up being sort of gobbled up by someone else or buried by the legal case. So I think a shame in some ways to see it get the tech get so sort of caught up in this, when you can see that there's obviously going to be a lot of benefits to it.
I mean, I guess the point that Chris keeps coming back to, and even though he didn't say it quite there, is that there's no monopoly on spot sprayers, and we were surrounded by spot sprayers on the day, yet by accordance to this lawsuit and carbon robotics stance, there should be, certainly in the US, a monopoly on laser weeding. And it's like, well, how can there be a monopoly on laser weeding when there's no monopoly on spot spray? So I think that's ultimately the crux of the argument as well. Is it's just, it's a really interesting little story that we'll keep following, no doubt. Again, though, interesting that in a sense, such a lack of non-chemical weeding at the event. There was some, and in the last episode, we mentioned iGen, and they were showing a hoeing system, but the bulk of the bulk of the systems there did have chemical applicators attached to them, and that is something that, you know, is worth some sort of reflection, really. Again, and then I just also thought it was a good person to talk to, Chris, on what his reason for going was, because this is something that I wanted to bring up. You know, we brought up in the last episode the fact that engineers aren't allowed to talk for themselves. I did actually talk to Chris about that as well offline, and he had some interesting things to say. But one of the other things was FIRA for me had a huge lacking of actual farmers and the marketplace, and I do sort of question, what is this show for? Is it technology companies just essentially having a sort of technology off, essentially, because it's just one tech company against another tech company? And I did feel that, yes, there is collaboration and synergies that can be grown out of that sort of thing, but I really feel like it lacked the customer ultimately in that environment. And look, again, this is not me trying to criticize the FIRA organizers. I mean, pulling that sort of event together with demonstrations and all that sort of thing is no mean feat, and is probably a very time consuming and expensive thing to do. But it did feel that there was a miss in terms of, I'd have liked to have had a third of the audience there being actual farmers and growers, and it just didn't seem to be that way, which again, you know, Chris highlighted.
I think that was a comment that came up, sort of comments that we had and my colleagues had when we went out to FIRA a few years ago in France, was a similar one. And I think there was like a feedback form as well, and I think that was one of my things that I would put on there was there actually enough farmers there? And as you say, you speak to a lot of people that are in the sort of the technology side of things and the engineering side of things, and you kind of see familiar faces and people from the UK, and you go, oh yeah, they're here, and then you sort of think, well, these are all the people that I see on, you know, from time to time at other technology based events, but where are the farmers? And it is a bigger question than that, isn't it? It's not just a FIRA thing. I mean, it is a case of sometimes dragging engineers kicking and screaming to go and actually talk to customers, you know, whether they're farmers or not, or whether they're someone else, having those conversations to understand whether they get your value proposition or not, but just to understand thoughts and what people, you know, what is the customer thinking when they see, what's the perception of what you're putting to them, can be really valuable. So yeah, I kind of agree with you on that one, but yeah, not to detract from the event itself, because I think it is certainly of value.
Yeah, I just think if I had Kit Franklin Ag Robot, I just don't know what I would gain from going to FIRA. So as me, Kit Franklin, academic podcaster, I went, loads of companies there. I got to chat to lots of people. I've updated my knowledge. Hopefully we're updating the world with that knowledge via this podcast. Brilliant. But I don't know how much value as Kit Franklin Ag Robot I would see in that. What I would want to be seeing is people who might well buy my machine. And and I just, I'm not, I think that's my point, is I'd be questioning it if I was actually a participant, as to, I really want farmers to be here, not just to be an technology update session. I want to be able to sell some things. So, you know, if you just take normal agriculture, like non-autonomous agriculture, you wouldn't get John Deere and Agco and C&H all turning up to a field with their tractors just to talk to each other about how good their latest tractor was. They will turn up if there's an audience of farmers there, you know. So at what point do we move on from this sort of being really, really harsh sort of geek fest, and when do we get to a commercial point?
Well, is that, you know, stepping outside of it a little bit here, so we'll move on quickly, but is that more of a comment around the stage and state of some of this new technology and this robotics piece, is that perhaps it's just not appealing quite to farmers yet? So you put the event on, and if you keep putting that event on for 20 years, you'll find a gradual shift in demographic from the first event, where it's going to be coders, academics, technologists to 15 years time, when it's going to be, they're still going to go, but they're just going to go to see what's going on, and then it's going to be farmers going with a checkbook in hand, or a service to buy.
Yeah, maybe it's just a matter of time, and I say we will definitely move on, but let's just reflect a little bit on, say, Groundswell. You went to Groundswell this year. It's a huge event. There's loads of farmers there. It was only, a handful of years ago that was a really niche event for people who were really, really bleeding edge, keen on regenerative farming ideas. Now it's become mainstream and a lot of people there. So maybe this sort of event in robotics, it just needs that bit more time. Although maybe let's go back to the thing we say all the time, Ray, is an agricultural robot an agricultural robot, or is it just the next iteration of a tractor? In time, does it just become that your standard agricultural show has a lot of robots there because it's just the inevitable next step? And the idea of something like FIRA, almost, does it potentially go by the wayside because you don't need that specialist thing anymore? Let us move on, because you're bound to have something to say back to that, but we don't have the time. We're going to go and we're going to hear from Solix, a solar-powered sprayer. And this was a machine that I have seen images of, but had no, when you see ag robots, Ray, and you can't always judge the scale of them. You think of an Agzeed. If you see a picture of an Agzeed, do you really know how big it is? Because there's no cab and there's no seat, and that's a really easy way to judge how big a thing is. Or a set of steps. If you see a picture of a machine, one of those huge dump trucks in a mine, you know how huge it is because there's steps up the side. The thing with robots is there's very little to gauge its scale. And I'd seen this Solix machine before and had no idea about its scale. So let's hear from them now, and we'll debate after.
So I'm here with Taylor Wetney from, we're stood next to the Solix robot, but it's out of a company called, you say it, not me.
Salimtech.
So this is a big, again, I've used this word before already today, sort of table-looking machine. But unlike a table that you'd sit around, this one you could almost get underneath for some shelter. So we've got solar panels on top, long legs with wheels on. This one's, we've got a spray boom on it. So I'm guessing it's a solar-powered spraying robot.
You got it. You hit the nail on the head there. It is a solar-powered scouting sprayer. And so I know you said kind of a tabletop, but our first model here about 6 years ago, it kind of looked like a ping pong table moving across the field. And so it's evolved from a scouting only model to now what we've commercialized here, going into our 4th year of commercial availability, a scouting sprayer. So fully solar power with a battery backup on the underside, and then a 40-foot boom across the front. They use our own Alice AI to detect where the weeds are and just spray those weeds.
Cool. And what we've got, obviously, is a couple of liquid tanks, but maybe limited capacity. So the solution is?
Yes, and there is smaller tanks than we're used to, right?
Yeah.
However, with our targeted application, we spray much less product. We're looking at around about an average of 85% reduction in chemical sprayed of specifically herbicides across our farmers.
So you're using cameras, spot spraying, weed ID, all that nice stuff. Okay. So what sort of area of land is this thing being put in to manage? What sort of, is this going for the model where you put it in the field after planting and you leave it there for the season? Is it a model where you would move it from area to area? What's the sort of plan?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a balancing act. It's a great question. We are scouting, as I mentioned. So the balance is, even when we're running across and kind of living at the field, we're generating a lot of data, even if we are not just spraying. We can run scouting only missions. And so with that, we do move it around some, but we're kind of finding that balance point of where we can we have one robot per field. And as we're there, we can meticulously manage continuously over that field and collect all sorts of data. So to answer your question, we're doing a little bit of both.
Rightio. Okay, so cool. So the thing that I saw and caught my eye outside was a refill docking station, which, so I've been, you don't know who I am, I've been doing sort of robot farming for quite a long time. Refill is one of the things that when you bring farmers out to see a thing, they go, well, it's great, but if you're still having to come and refill the machine, how does it work? So you guys have developed that. It's a sort of an IBC tank, but there's some smarts on it which allow the thing to allow the robot to couple up to it. Do you want to explain that and how that's happening?
Yeah, and the auto refill base is something that we're commercially launching. So it'll be commercially available next year in 2026. But you're right. For true autonomy, it's a key piece of that. If you're still going to the field every day, it's not as valuable of optimizing your time. And so how that works is it's a solar powered auto refill base with a 250 gallon tote. That tote and that base has actuators and cameras. The robot will back up to the unit, take control of it. Then those actuators will extend, zero in on a blue circle on the back of the sprayer you can see right here. And then we will automatically make that connection and refill. And so you tender that auto refill base, and that could last weeks, depending on how much you're spraying, how much the weed pressure is. But that'll just autonomously do that. You can hop in the mobile app or web page and see it within the system as it's connecting, but a very key piece of the overall platform.
Great. So how many of these machines have you got? Is this still a late stage prototype? Is it commercial? And if it's commercial, how many?
Yeah, it's a commercial product. We're going into our 4th year of commercial availability. We've been limited scale over the last 3 years. We have 60 units running this season with customers over 8 states throughout the United States. In addition to that, we have a similar amount running in Brazil. Going into 2026, we'll have 200 units with customers globally.
Wow, so it's big numbers and impressive. And then the final thing I'd always like to ask people is, how much did it cost me?
That's the $1 million question, right?
Well, hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Good point. We're very focused on how do we build a machine that is cost effective for the grower, where they could have a small fleet of these or maybe a large fleet of these. And so each unit costs $50,000, and each refill base station costs $10,000. You don't need the refill base station. You can refill manually, but all in for those two, it'd be $60K.
$50,000. That's a really compelling number. Yeah, wow, it's impressive. And then, just in case I didn't ask before, which I think I did, but I can't remember your answer, what sort of area is that single machine able to cover?
So we're going very slowly and meticulously across the field. We're going a mile an hour.
Yeah.
So each machine is managing around 500 acres per machine, about 50 acres per day.
Yeah. So you got a $50,000 machine, $50,000 machine covering 500 acres. Those sort of numbers seem to add up to me. So fair play. Perfect. Well, unless you've got a super thing you want to share with me, we'll wrap.
I don't think so. Just if anybody wants to know more, our website, salemtech.com.
Perfect. Well plugged.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I was blown away, Ray. I stood there. I looked at this machine. The auto refill was quite clever. It's a solar powered machine, but it's not just a solar powered machine that's spraying directly under its little 2-3 meter wideness. It's got a 40-foot boom on it. So even though it's quite slow and steady, it's a 40-meter boom. It's got spot spraying. It's got decent coverage, all these things, and I was expecting a big price tag, and he said $50,000. Found that remarkable. I mean, there was plenty of companies there, Echo Robotics, et al., who want hundreds of thousands just for the spot sprayer to put behind a tractor. These guys are selling a fully autonomous, solar-powered spot sprayer, $50,000.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, these guys, I've been following these guys because they started out, it wasn't a spraying robot. I think it either had like a weeding head on it, which was like a...
Well, he said it was just scouting.
Or just a scouting, yeah. And I remember seeing it when I was at Small Robot Company, and I remember seeing it it was one of those sort of other systems that was doing something similar that was sort of looming in the background from the States. And then I remember seeing when they sort of put the boom on it, and everyone kind of went, oh, it looks a bit ungainly, but actually, it looks kind of half credible. And then when they did the transfer system, the sort of autonomous refill system, that's when it kind of looked really compelling as an offering, because all of a sudden we were taking our proposition of scan the field, only spray where you need to spray, use your sort of traditional sprayer to do so with a manual operator, and then all of a sudden you're taking that and you're saying, well, just leave the robot to its own devices and it'll go and spray what it needs to spray, where it needs to spray it. And all of a sudden you've replaced a probably £200,000 sprayer, and you don't have to go and buy a near on £100,000 robot. You can just buy this system, and it does everything for you. So, and in the previous episode, we talked about the other robot that kind of looks similar, but must be on a completely different scale.
Yeah, so you're scrabbling around for the word for iGen.
So iGen, yes.
Yeah. iGen with a silent A.
Yeah.
If you the iGen machine is literally like dining table size. Whereas this machine is, and again, what I said, that, you know, that's like a single solar panel is the lid of that. Whereas this Solix thing is probably, you know, 4 solar panels, and it's much taller. So, you know, you can walk underneath it rather than sit round it. And then it has a boom that unfolds on the front with cameras. But yeah, I just think for me, it's almost like a camera spot sprayer for $50,000 and then a free robot platform to drive it around. You know, that's like the $50,000 seems like the money you'd pay for a 40-meter boom with spot spraying on it, to put on the back of a tractor. The fact that it then comes with this solar powered machine that will trundle around and do 50 acres a day is like actually is almost just like a free benefit. I don't know. I found it remarkable value proposition.
I'm struggling to see how you can justify the sort of the $50,000 for each of the little iGen robots versus the $60,000 of this machine with a refill. I mean, I suppose this sort of shows you, doesn't it? I mean, this is the value of an event like this, because if you were to find yourself in the market, you can go around and start to really price things out. But it also shows you that in new technologies, you're going to get large disparities in the cost structure, aren't you? Because some are going to have backers that perhaps have got deeper pockets, and some are going to have got themselves further down that sort of those development cycles to get their unit costs down. So you're not in that sort of commodity space, are you? You're very much out in that sort of, you know, very much front of the field. How much, you know, the leading edge, bleeding edge technologies. Sometimes it's going to be more of a case of bespoke kind of one-off manufacture to get the prototype out, and that is going to come at a cost.
The way they were talking is though they have product out in reasonable numbers, and that they're not in that sort of every single one's different and being developed stage. They are in a sort of more production stage. So that should give you some confidence and go for it. 500 acres under one machine. I can see it working in broad acre crops with a 40-meter boom, 40 feet boom, I should say. So it's like a 12-meter sprayer. You know, you could put it on a 200-acre block of wheat in the UK, and it would sort of do the job, I suppose, and use a lot less chemical while it did it. All right. It was new and novel to me. I've seen it peripherally in pictures, but it was definitely new to see it up close and learn the details of it, and I hope that's interesting to people. I skipped the sort of Echo Robotics et al. Because I feel like, you know, a spot spraying thing that goes behind a tractor, we've seen it, we spoke about it in the past, and so I didn't get any interviews with those guys, but I did talk to Tensorfield. Now, Tensorfield have a really interesting sort of mode of action for weed control, and we're going to hear from them now.
I'm here with Xiong Chang from Tensorfield Agriculture.
Yep. So
it's a really neat bit of technology we'll come on to in a minute, but if you start speaking, you can explain your background, because you're a friendly voice.
Thanks, yeah. It's really nice hearing other people from the UK. I do feel very far from home sometimes. So I'm Xiong, co-founder here of Tensorfield Agriculture. I studied engineering at the University of Cambridge in the UK. I grew up in London. Parents are first-generation immigrants from Malaysia. And so I went into investment banking finance for the first few years of my career. That seemed to be where talent was going. After spending a few years there, I realized I really wanted to return to my major, which was manufacturing engineering. So I do at Cambridge, and getting back to building things. So I joined.
Very admirable of you. Get away from that finance world.
Right, exactly. Just really wanted something more tangible in front of me. Yeah. So I joined a robotics startup over here. It had been accepted into the HAX accelerator, which is an accelerator based out in Shenzhen. So the story is a little bit complicated, but there's an investor here called SOSV. Back then, this is 2016, they had a model where they would fund companies that were early stage hardware companies, particularly in the deep tech space, and they would transport the entire company over to Shenzhen, China, where they would do rapid prototyping over a 100-day program, and then show whether it's the market. Yeah, for a big demo. So we actually demoed at CES in 2017. And that was after spending just a couple of months in China building and iterating on this backyard robot. And we saw some traction with that, but really the core team wants to ask ourselves the question, what do we really want to be working on for the next 10 years? And that's when we just realized agriculture is such an amazing application for robotics. And at that time, late computer vision technology, there are so many tasks on the farm that require human input in terms of being able to make judgment calls on what they see. So back then, there were just so many applications where computer vision could automate tasks that previously could only be done by crews of humans. And after speaking to many farmers, especially in the Salinas Valley, in California, which is where the majority of fresh vegetables is grown in the US, we found that growers all had one particular problem that they were really trying to wrestle with, and that was cost of labor, and especially cost of labor associated with hand weeding. And we looked at that as a problem that was solvable, because now we had the technology for machines to be able to tell the difference between crops and weeds. And then we came across a pretty interesting piece of research from UC Davis that showed that if you put boiling hot oil onto weeds, surprisingly enough, the weeds die. So how do you combine those two facts? We've got the ability to distinguish between crops and weeds on modern hardware, and then this knowledge that sticking boiling oil onto the weed is going to kill it without any herbicides. And that's what we've done to try and productize this.
Okay, really interesting. I was doing laser weeding in 2015. We had a laser weeding system and spent a lot of time talking about modes of action of killing weeds. I'm guessing that a benefit of oil over hot water is the fact it has a bit of viscosity. It sort of sticks a bit to the leaf of the plant. Is that an advantage over just having tanks of hot and just heating up water?
I'd say the main advantage is twofold. One is that you can heat oil to a much higher temperature than water, and it's that delta in temperature that facilitates the transfer of energy.
Real transfer, yeah.
Second thing is specific heat capacity of oil is a lot lower. So it takes much less energy to heat up the oil to a very high temperature.
There we go. Very good technical reason.
And then the third thing is around as you mentioned, the viscosity and also the surface temperature of the oil. There are very good wetting characteristics. So whereas water will tend to bead on the surface of a plant, oil will tend to spread, and you end up with a much better dissipation of heat.
Oh, really interesting. Okay, and then then the question that was actually asked during your demonstration, but a fairly obvious one. You've got a machine here that's got tanks of oil. You were saying it's canola oil, rapeseed oil, as we call it in the UK,
right?
And that's currently fresh. There was two questions. I'll roll them into one. One is, could we utilize waste oil from the catering industry? And you can explain a bit what your views on that are. And then secondly, what's the implications of putting that oil into the soil, and is there going to be any residual build-up or essentially environmental damage from doing that?
Yeah, so I'll address the first question. Do we need to always use fresh oil? Any oil that's suitable for deep fat frying we can use, so it needs a high smoke point. So refined canola, refined soybean oil, these are all great. Whether we're able to redirect waste oil from the catering industry is something that should be very, very feasible. It's just that at the moment, in early trials, we've got approval from CCOF, which is the certifier for organic produce over here, for using a particular source, which is one label that we get from Smart and Final, which is a local supermarket chain. I think there will be more paperwork to fill out to show that we can safely use oil that's taken from the catering industry, and it's overhead that we just haven't prioritized yet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The second was about
It would make a really nice story, though.
it would make a really nice story. Exactly. Yeah. The second is around how the oil persists in the soil. So actually, given how promising the early results from 2 universities were in showing that oil is effective, there was first UC Davis and second was University of Bonn in 2017, discovered that you can kill pretty much any weed if you catch it at the right growth state that superheats the oil. There was a sister study that was done also at the University of Bonn that showed that mineralization rates of the oil at these doses in soils led to a half-life of about 60 days. And so the increase in background oil amount in the soil is still less than 0.1% of total matter, and it's not a concern for the growers.
Rightio, okay. And then just final one, sort of more on the business side of things. Have you shipped these units yet? Are they commercially operating, or is this still sort of late prototype stage?
I'll say it's a mix of both. So this is a late prototype. It's the first prototype that we were able to build and call our commercial alpha. And what I mean by that is it's doing actual paid work on customer fields. We're just coming to the end of paid trials with the largest grower of organic produce in the US. And yeah, we've been testing the pricing model. We charge as a service, so $50 fixed per acre, plus a quarter for every 100 weeds that we shoot. And the grower partner we can work with has been great about being transparent of where the machine has been working, where it hasn't been, and where it's been saving the money. Adjustments that we've had to make to this machine and also to the next generations of machines to be really compelling for a use case for them. So I would say we're still in the late stages of code development with pretty major grower. We've gotten some more requests for demos and trials of this event, which is great. And yeah, the next machines that we build will really constitute the commercial rollout.
Alrighty, and then final question: Would you like to see yourself shipping these back to the UK anytime soon, working in the organic sector in the UK?
I think that would be great. I mean, if there was a way that if this technology was compelling for growers over there, I'd love to be educated as to how crops are grown in the UK. Despite having grown up in the UK, I don't know anything about agriculture back there. I was a newcomer to agriculture when we started this project about 7 years ago, and just found the combination of being very straightforward, open about what we were doing well and what we were doing badly. It's been amazing working with growers over here. So yeah, if growers in the US can be as generous with their time and as open with us, that sounds like it would be an amazing opportunity.
Well, get in contact in future then.
Yeah,
cheers.
Sounds good.
Wow, that I've not heard of those guys, but that's some seriously interesting technology.
Yeah, there's literally 3 of them, I think, working in this little team. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. One of the first thing I'm going to unpack is nothing to do with technology, but just the fact that we keep coming back to this thing: are you an agriculturalist looking for a solution, or a technologist looking for an outlet? And maybe when we have that conversation, it sounds quite negative. And in this case, I just find it really positive. This guy, he really obviously a clever chap, studied engineering at Cambridge. I'm sure could wipe the floor with your eye in terms of intelligence rate. Went into finance, eventually realised that was probably going to be a dull way of life, and has found the attraction later in life of not only being an engineer, but being an engineer in the ag environment. And I think that I was asked today when I was out in my cotton field by a student, what's my feelings on what is ag technology going to do to jobs and aspirations in agriculture? And I said, well, I think there's a real opportunity that it attracts new people in, and even people who were born and brought up on farms, who then went off and did other things in their 20s, in their early 30s. There seems to be this switch where people go, I've spent 15 years looking at a computer screen doing finance in London or wherever. And actually I came from that place called the farm that everyone told me I didn't want to be involved with, but maybe I do actually want to be involved. And maybe this is maybe ag tech is a great way of bringing these fresh ideas and fresh people, or even people who are from that background, but bringing them back in once they've had their time in the world of finance and all of that stuff. So let's not always be negative, let's say, about, or let's say there's just two sides to the technologies coming into ag could be a really positive thing.
Well, and let's not forget as well that we kind of, we opened with even what's this all about when we did our first ever pre-teaser episode, and we did say, you know, there's many people out there potentially working in agricultural engineering that don't necessarily realize it. This is probably not an example of someone not realizing it, being very much aware of it, but not necessarily being from the background. So it's good to see, and as you say, I mean, attracting talent from, you know, Cambridge University is it's nice to see that, you know, you can attract, or agriculture can attract that level, that sort of caliber of talent. So yeah, excellent. And actually, on the technology level, I was and you can see how that talent has been applied when you're saying, because immediately I was like, oh, okay, hot oil, all right, yeah, heating stuff. Oh, we've talked about this before. Oh, there's loads of energy involved. It's yada yada yada. They've come at it from another angle of saying, well, let's not heat water, because everyone goes on about water, and that's the one thing that probably you and I have banged on about, either heating the plant itself, which is full of water, or heating water to then apply to the plant. Again, the specific heat capacity of water is really high, which basically means you just need loads of energy to actually raise the temperature of that water to a point where you're going to do some damage to the plant. So they've just gone, well, let's not use water then, let's use something else. So that's a very compelling kind of piece of technology and an application. So yeah, I totally, I think, and then actually, again, as I've done with everyone, to try and I'm very visual when it comes to these things. So I've been on their website and just seeing what they've developed and how they've developed it. I mean, they've gone about it in a sensible approach. You know, you've got a bank of effectively valves, as far as I can see, and I assume some form of oil preheating. And then basically they've just got valves that just deliver in that sort of waterfall approach that we talk about, where, you know, you just sort of blanket, you just pass them over the weeds, and then just apply where they are in that sort of very binary on-off function.
Yeah, you turn on and off, you just have lots of nozzles, you turn on the ones over the weed at any given time. Yeah, this sort of waterfall approach, as I would put in my presentations about laser weeding. Yeah, as you say, very clever use of some physics, you know, again, fairly basic physics, talking about heat deltas in terms of heat transfer and talking about heat capacities, but clearly important ones. The thing I find really interesting is this circularity, this idea that can we use waste oil back into it. I'm not saying they had never thought of this before, because I think they had, but somebody asked it during the talk and he didn't really have and then I asked it again and he gave a sort of scratchy answer. Apparently when he did his demonstration the next day, somebody else watched it, and apparently he like led front and center with, this is going to be a circular system and we're going to use waste oil. So
I like it.
Because it was quite fun. I was talking to someone and I was saying, oh yeah, he doesn't realize what he's got, because he really ought to be talking about the circularity. And they were like, oh yeah, he did. And I'm like, no, he didn't. And they were like, well, he did. And I'm like, where did you see him talk? And they were like, oh, today. And I was like, oh, I saw him yesterday. And then I picked him up on it. So
there you go.
There we go.
Adaptive. It's what you got to be when you're a startup. I think my only other comments on that one are around the technology piece are, I think they should not get bogged down with an autonomous approach. They've got what looks like a robot here, at least.
Oh, it could just be an implement on the back of a tractor.
Oh, perfect. I was going to say, because I think that's where people like Carbon Robotics have totally they tried to do that whole thing. They're like, it's going to be autonomous, it's going to be a laser weeder, it's going to do this and this and this. $2 million worth of equipment later, no one wants to buy it. But as soon as you just turn it into an implement, all of a sudden, I can put that on the back of the tractor I've already spent, $500,000 on.
The thing they've built is essentially a self-propelled oil thing. Off record and off conversation, we had a really in-depth conversation about self-propelled versus tractor mounted. He was quizzing me on why why did certain machines warrant self-propelled compared to mounted? As he said himself, he's not from an ag background. I gave him a little bit of my thoughts on that, and I said basically, ultimately, it comes to utilization. If you end up if you've got a farm that you've got a sprayer that spends his whole life strapped to the back of the tractor, at some point you question, wouldn't you be better off to have a self-propelled sprayer that's a bit better and a bit nicer to drive and whatever? If your implement only spends 2 weeks on the back of a tractor, then it doesn't warrant being self-propelled. So I mean, that was basically what I gave him on that, and he was soaking it all in. You could see he was really listening, so that was quite nice. There was a bit, the machine they've built is very much a prototype, it's very much a demonstrator, and there was some dodgy bits of mechanical design where you can see some linkages didn't have enough clearance between them, and things were rubbing together and all sorts of stuff, which we had a bit of a joke about with him as well. But fundamentally, the platform driving up and down the field is not the important thing. What's important is this squirting of the oil and the fact that that's doing a good job and working well. So,
well,
as I say, great.
That's it. If you're not from an ag background, you're a technologist, and you need
an ag engineer.
You need an ag engineer. So you know what you need to do is get in contact with Brash Consulting, and Kit and I will sort you out with the knowledge you need to know.
Yeah, well, no, you should probably talk to Ray at Flint Technology. He should probably talk to, and he'll get his good friend Dan Griffiths to help him out as well.
No, what he'll do is go, Kit, I've got a few things I just want to ask you.
Yeah, and then I'll give it away for nothing. Anyway, because one thing we can rely on is Kit helps everyone for nothing.
Oh dear.
But
anyway,
dear.
We need to move on.
Before we get into the sob story of my finances, let's finish off then, and we're going to finish off with another Brit. 2 in a row, Ray. 2 in a row. I went all the way to California, and all I did was speak to British. We're going to finish off
We've tried to get away from here, and we've all just come to find you again.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Simon Pearson from Lincoln.
Okay, so FIRA is drawing to a close, and I am here with fellow Brit Professor Simon Pearson of University of Lincoln. Simon, we famously failed to win over the crowd at the Oxford Union.
I think it's fair to say we got our asses kicked.
Yeah. No, I don't think it.
We tried though. We tried,
but we failed at winning the debate at the Oxford Farming Conference a couple of years back. But you've been here in FIRA for 3 days. I know it's part of a slightly longer trip for you. I'm only here for literally the conference. You're taking a bit of a trip around the sort of Central Valley of California, I know, over the next couple of days. But give us a vibe of FIRA as a fellow UK-based agricultural engineering, agricultural technology academic.
Yeah. Okay, Kit. Yeah. No, it's fantastic to stay here in the California sunshine.
It's very warm and sunny, yeah.
It's really nice, isn't it? End of 3 long days. I've been really impressed. First time I've been to FIRA, it really is impressive. I love the setup. It's a bit like the agritech road shows, the potato days, where you've got real machines doing real work, so that farmers can see it and get a bit of confidence in it. And so I love that. And for me, it just shows that the technology is developing. So I think if you come around here 3 years ago, some of the kit would have been a bit clunky, some of the startups a bit early. Yeah, and I've seen some genuine stuff that really works. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been scratchy at best. Now there's a lot of things here that are actually viable options on farm.
Yeah,
and that's definitely a big change.
There's only really 2 key themes for me that I've seen here today. So it's a little bit narrow.
Yeah.
So weeding robots.
Yeah.
Loads of them, really working, fantastic.
Spot
sprayers, the eco-robotics things like that. Fantastic. You'll have appreciated, but all the autonomy here. That seems to be really working quite well now, doesn't it, really? I think that's really moved on.
Well, I think the first time I demonstrated a tractor driving itself at a show, well, we did a combine, crazily. We did a combine at cereals, and
I remember it.
We nearly.
I had to get out of the way of it.
Yeah, they say we nearly killed people, probably. But I don't know, it worked 3 times out of 4, and 1 time it went AWOL. But yeah, no AWOL things here. Everything doing as it should on every time someone pressed the button. Off it went, nice and reliably.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's quite impressive. I guess I don't want to be negative about it, but you mentioned demonstration to farmers. I think there's a lack of farmers here.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
I think it feels very much technologists speaking to technologists.
Yeah, probably a bit of that. I mean, I think, and I tell you the reason. I think actually these guys really get out on farm and really show it on farm.
Yeah.
So maybe a lot of the farmers going, well, I've seen that, I've done that, and I bought one of them, or I'm not buying one of them. I don't know. I feel I love the way they do the sales out here. It's really, really customer focused, and it's all about service and delivery. I'm quite impressed by that.
Yeah, I think it should be said that this is all specialty crop, what they call specialty crops, what we might call fresh produce and sort of horticultural crops, I suppose. And therefore, those growers are particularly particular about what they get. So all these people here are doing lots of on-farm demos and work, aren't they? They're not going to park 5 machines on a dealership forecourt and people just come up and buy them. They're going to have to work for their sales.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the crops here are very, very high value, so you've got a good opportunity for some significant ROIs, and that's swept in the investment, I think. And it's done at scale, isn't it, in the US? So what I hope we see is some of this technology coming out across sort of main arable crops, broad acre crops. Or generally, I'm sure that investment will diffuse out in one day.
Yeah, so let's talk about that investment. I mean, I find it, the numbers mentioned here in terms of funding rounds and things, talking tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions on occasion.
Yeah.
Money that we just aren't seeing in the UK agritech. We've got companies who, maybe have done millions, but it definitely feels it's quieting down in the last year or so. And we've had some, sad sort of demises, I suppose. Do you think you're a man who's very plugged into lots of people with sort of startup technology in the UK? Do you think there's a way of maybe capturing some of this Californian cash?
Oh, I hope so. I'm absolutely green with envy, really. It is a little bit frustrating. I do fly the flag for British technology. We're damn good at it. We could probably do it at half the cost of these guys here.
They seem to be very bloated.
Yeah, there is. There's lots of people wearing sort of corporate hats and stuff.
Lots of branding,
lots of marketing stuff. So I'm pretty sure if we had that amount of dollar, we'd go further, faster, and we'd deliver more. So it is deeply frustrating, and it is very, very hard to get funding in the UK at the moment. So one of the reasons I'm here is to try and build those links. The great thing about agriculture is international. We've all got the same problem all around the world. So if we could actually network well and share, it's for everybody's good. But yeah, it's big dollar, and I'm green with envy. And I'd like to say I brought a bucket load of it back to England, but I haven't.
Yeah, okay, well that's good. That's nice, because I feel the same feeling. I don't think, but actually genuinely, I don't think I want our companies to be awash with 50 million. I want them to be awash with 5 million that means they've got the money to do the job, but they keep focused.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the 50 million helps you focus. I think the 50 million makes you wear corporate clothing and fly around a lot. They seem to fly around a lot.
Yeah.
So
I completely agree. I think what happens in the UK, where everybody's bootstrapping, really thin bootstrapping. And then you come here and you see people doing it well, and you think, oh, wow, I could do that, but I just haven't got the cash.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to say, though. I don't see, I could do that statement is really important, actually. I don't think there's anything here that I've not seen at home.
No, we do it all. We do the autonomy here. We do the autonomy here. We do the weeding. We do the AI. We do the image recognition. I've not seen anything that's frightened me at all. I mean, maybe as we go forward with some of these new AI things, the vision, language, action stuff, the VLA stuff, physical intelligence stuff, maybe there'll be something, but I've not seen it yet.
No. Cool. Well, we're having very similar feelings, so that's great. Well, maybe just tell us what you're going to do for your remaining time here, because you're off on a bit of a tour.
Yeah, we're going down to Reservoir Farms in Salinas, and I'm quite excited by that. It's a new robot testbed initiative where they've got, I think, 12 robot startups together on a farm with farmers, funded by farmers, where they can develop their tech all the way from TRL 1 to TRL 9, and it's got access to VC funding. So really excited by that, because I think we're missing something like that in the UK. And what we're missing, I think, is that cluster effect, getting people together, but farmer-led stuff, where farmers are actually saying, hey, don't do that, do this. And it just accelerates everybody. So we're going to see that, and I'm quite excited by it. Maybe it's a model we should think about in England.
Yeah, cool. Well, have a fun trip, and I will see you soon.
It's great to see you, and I hope you get your flight back home. Okay.
Cheers.
That was an ominous remark at the end about hope you get your flight back home, because my flights back home were a nightmare. I ended up having a night in Houston that was unplanned. So there you go. Interesting little insight from Simon there. And he was feeling the same sort of feelings as me, as there really wasn't anything there that was making me think we are behind the curve. The only thing that was different is the cash available.
Yeah, I think
and by we, I mean the royal we of the UK.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. As I was listening to that, it made me wonder why. And then I think it comes back when we've talked about this before, isn't it? Is it a function of the position of the US in the world economy, or is it a function of the size of the US agricultural economy, or is it a function of both?
I think it's a function of the proximity of Central Valley, California, which sounds very niche, but it isn't. Central Valley, California grows all of the fresh produce and high value crops for the rest of the US, and the proximity of that valley and its agriculture to Silicon Valley. You know, you've got Salinas that kept being mentioned is a place that's only, you know, an hour or so from Silicon Valley. So you've just got proximity to venture capital and proximity to tech startups, and that whole ecosystem has just a really close proximity with this agriculture and this food problem.
It by proxy then, I suppose, is kind of a function of the position of the US at a higher level, because you're so close to California, because California is sort of, you know, Silicon Valley, or a significant proportion of California is, or the economy in Silicon Valley, which is, you know, leading in all kinds of technologies, but also really leading in terms of funding. There's the spillover there by proxy to agriculture.
Yeah, so essentially Silicon Valley, by sort of definition, is San Jose and the sort of south side of the San Francisco Bay, and Salinas is literally an hour from there. So it's like, yeah, it would be like if there was this huge sort of tech funding bubble in Birmingham, you know, Harper would benefit from that inevitably because it'd only be an hour away, you know?
Yeah.
And as I say, that Central Valley of California, all it came out time and time again, that whole conversation was how much of this high value agriculture is happening there. So yeah, interesting. I don't feel like, and just to be clear, you know, we talked about Agtonomy in the last episode. They've just had an $18 million investment, $18 million investment, but there were conversations around FIRA of 80, $100 million investments into companies in the last, you know, handful of months. It's just, the numbers are huge.
I mean, I take optimism from the fact that if it's happening, you know, if new technologies are being developed in the States and they're making progress and they're adding value, that it's not impossible for that to happen somewhere else. Because if there was no new developments happening within agriculture, then you'd say, well, you know, it's just probably just a dead end market, and things don't move and things can't happen. But they clearly can. And because they can clearly happen, it means that they can clearly happen in, you know, in other countries, you know, the UK potentially being one of them. It's not beyond the realms of, you know, and we've seen that. I mean, you know, rounding this back a little bit to people we've spoken to, people are making at worst a good living from delivering agri-tech, and at best, you know, are sort of really changing the game in terms of, you know, value propositions for farmers, but also in terms of, you know, improving the lives of their employees and really bringing things up to date, and sort of helping to do their bit to boost the economy in the UK. We've spoken to some fantastic companies over our over 50 odd episodes now.
Yeah, so I think one thing I would just say, just to finish off this funding point, is that the thing you have to realise is none of them are making money, which I said in the last episode. But the very much the sort of open opinion around the event was they're all getting these huge amounts of venture capital. None of them are actually making money by selling products or their product or their service yet. It's still just churn of investment money, really, at this point. And so, yeah, some of those more niche, streamlined companies, UK-based, that are actually making profit, fair play. One other thing I think I want to say, and this is probably, we don't have time to go through this in depth, but what I found interesting is one of the things I want to do while I'm here in the US is get on farm and speak to farmers. And if I say to a UK company, could you put me in contact with a farmer who's taken on your machine and would be happy to talk about it? They would normally jump at that and go, yeah, we know farmer XYZ, they'd love to talk about it. Because if there's one thing that farmers love doing in the UK, it's having a yarn and telling you about something. When I was asking that question over here or at FIRA, I was getting a lot of, well, no, our farmers don't want to speak to people. They don't want to give their trade secrets away or their competitive advantage away by talking to people. They're really not comfortable talking to people. And I say that could be an episode in itself and it could be a discussion in itself, but it was just really interesting because I feel that UK farmers love to have a yarn, love to tell you about what they're doing, love to, especially if they've just invested in a bit of kit. If it's working well for them, they want to shout about it from the rooftops. But the sort of Californian farmer apparently does not want to share their successes. So that was quite an interesting thing. And I found maybe that there's a more, a sort of more closed, they might be leading the world with all this funding and thing, but there just seems to be a lot more, they were quite closed off. The amount of people I said, so have you ever been to Agritechnica or have you ever been to Europe? And have you ever seen the amount of people who hadn't? It's like, oh, no, never really left California. It was quite amazing. This sort of assumption of everything in the world is here, don't you know? The best stuff is all here. I'm like, well, in ag, the best stuff's at Agritechnica, I'm afraid. And if I was an American machinery developer, I'd be making the trip to Agritechnica every 2 years, and most of these guys hadn't even heard of it, let alone thought about going.
Yeah, that was one of my takeaways when I was out in the States many years ago now. When I was on my placement, I made friends with some of the guys I was working with, and they were really sound guys, really friendly, really helpful, wanted to show off the best of their country. But then when you said, oh, whereabouts have you traveled to? What countries have you been to? Oh, I've never been anywhere but the States. It's an interesting approach to.
Yeah, so culturally, I understand that. America, I mean, I'm here now. America's huge. I'm in Mississippi. Mississippi alone has the land area of half the UK. The place is massive. I can understand why you wouldn't need to leave America. I can actually understand that. There are mountains, there are deserts, there are beaches, there are all the things you could wish to experience in life within its perimeter. So I can understand not traveling as a person, but as a company, I can't understand. Our farmers in the UK, how many farmers in the UK have done Nuffield scholarships, to go and learn how to grow a crop better? Or, if you went and spoke to our I won't name names, but our key salad producers, they will travel around the world to pick up the best insight on how to do that. Whereas it seemed to be like the guys in California were like, no, because we just do it the best, so why would we travel to see it? So I think there's a slight difference between, yeah, I can understand the American lack of travel thing, but I can't understand that from a competitive business developing a machine point of view. I found that quite bizarre, this sort of closed-mindedness that I kind of felt. And I might be completely wrong with that, and it might have been a very bad first impression, but that was a first impression I picked up.
Well, I mean, you make a nice point as well. The best approach is to go to Agritechnica, and so that's what I should be doing.
You should be doing that next week, Ray, and we shall be hearing all about it in at least one episode of the Brash Ag podcast. What a lovely way to wrap us up and get me off of another one of my high horses that I've developed recently. So if you have been enjoying the pod, please like, subscribe, share with a friend, talk about it down the pub, steal your wife's or husband's device and make them follow it on Spotify too. All of those good tricks.
And if you want to get in contact, it's contact@brash-ag.com. We always want to hear from you. Suggestions, requests. Tell us we're wrong. Tell us we're right.
Tell me California Ag is way better than everyone else's.
Yeah, exactly. We're up for it. We're up for all of that. So yeah, get in contact. And maybe we'll feature your comments in the next episode. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to Raymond King and Kit Franklin. Brash Ag. Thank you, and tune in next time.